All right, welcome to Frontline. 6 o'clock here on the East Coast, and we're kicking off with some breaking news out of the White House. President Trump signing a new executive order today outlining the terms of a deal to transfer TikTok to a majority U.S. ownership. Vice President J.D. Vance saying that the deal would be valued at around $14 billion. And as Greta Thunberg and friends attempt to make their way to Gaza again, there seems to be a bit of a problem. And no, it's not because one of them is going to light their own boat on fire again. This time, opponents have hijacked their radios and communication systems and are blasting ABBA on repeat.
We don't know what it was exactly. And right now,
Activists branding it as a psychological operation, but vowed we will not be intimidated. How dare you? This is pure gold. I mean, does anybody actually care about Greta's flotilla? Seriously? I mean, what are they even doing anyway? They keep talking about bringing stuff to places, but they never make it there. But first, shut it down and all the non-essential people might just become non-employed people. Let's go. You might have heard that the government is going to shut down in, I don't know, like 5 days, but because Democrats are refusing to support anything that doesn't give $1 trillion of your taxpayer money to illegal aliens.
Mr. President, furloughs are very typical when the government shuts down. Why is the administration directing federal layoffs of federal workers this time around?
Well, this is all caused by the Democrats. They asked us to do something that's totally unreasonable. They never change. They want to give money away to illegals.
So Trump has basically said, like, enough. We're done being the party of letting you rule from the minority. Look, here's our budget. If you don't want to vote for it or not, I mean, have a nice day. But the way the government shuts down if you don't do this, this is according to Politico, we will immediately begin large-scale reductions in force. Holy cow. I can't tell you how excited this made me.
With current and projected deficits, we need to cut expenditures by 32%.
Let's make it an even 40.
Oh, that's not necessary.
Slash it. Slash it.
My spirit animal. I say just make it an even 90%, but I got all kinds of ideas for this. But aside from the prospect of cutting huge swaths of government, Trump has basically checkmated the Democrats at their own game. In one hand, the Democrats are facing a massive fiscal scale back and a more efficient Trump budget because it needs 60 votes in the Senate, which means 7 Democrats need to cross the threshold and vote for it. Or if Democrats want a FAFO, they can play this stupid game, and then they've been playing this game forever, and they're going to refuse to vote for anything that Republicans put forward that doesn't have health care for illegal aliens in it, which will then shut down the government, giving Donald Trump expanded legal authority to eliminate entire positions in the federal government due to the lack of funds. Boom. Now, the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, sending a memo to all applicable agencies saying, in part, consistent with the applicable law, including the requirements 5 CFR 351, agencies are directed to use this opportunity to consider reduction in force notices for all employees in programs, projects, or activities that satisfy all 3 of the following conditions. Basically, we're allowed to eliminate all your jobs. In short, and this is so the left can understand this, if the government shuts down, that means there's a very limited amount of money to spend, which causes the government to only retain what they call essential services. Now, look, you're probably asking the same question as me. If we send everybody home that are non-essential services, and if they are non-essential, why are we employing them anyway? Anyway, look, Trump is ready for this either way. And think about it. There are an estimated 9 to 10 million direct and contracted employees of the federal government. The fact that we don't know exactly is even a bigger problem. But we don't need that many. We have departments that manage and employ other departments. You've got 4,000 people at the Department of Education, and they don't employ a single active teacher. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Did you know that if the government shuts down, only 6% of their employees are considered essential, which makes me believe the entire department is not essential. Here's another one. Natural Resources Conservation Service. This little gem is a relic from the 1935 Dust Bowl with 12,000 people dedicated solely to erosion. Erosion costing the U.S. taxpayers $800 million a year. And they're not even responsible for replacing any soil. 0 yards of soil. They're just there to know about erosion, which makes this department an even bigger department of redundancy department, because we already have 6 agencies that not only study erosion, but also physically do something about it, which are the EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Geological Survey, FEMA, and the National Park Service. So as far as I'm concerned, all of those could be reductions in force. And this goes for probably 50% of the federal government, guys. But the libs, they hate this, because a lot of those people are in federal unions. Unions that can be easily mobilized to support Democrats. That's what's really going on here. That's why the left loathes cutting government, either in the budget or in this new proposal under a government shutdown. So they're faced with stuff like that. Or not only giving Trump the win of passing his budget, but also giving him key legislative wins for his policies. Now, to be fair, I don't consider the 12 individual bills that have actually been passed out of committee making up the federal budget as a win. Here we go. Ha! This is the actual budget. Well, actually, the bill is only 2,000 pages, which is about this high. But when you add all the detailed explanations, directives, and earmarks, this is the whole bill. 6,000 plus pages. There's a ton of stuff in there that's absolutely a waste of money. Almost 6,000 pages that not one congressman will read before voting on it, which is how they get this stuff passed, all this weird stuff. Commission a study that will look at the impact of congestion taxing, which is essentially a big toll, as much as they are in New York City. Look, I could tell you that these types of tolls are bad and it discourages people from driving there. And I just did that for free. $2.3 billion for Amtrak, which is the same revenue that they took in from ticket sales. I don't understand why we're subsidizing this, especially because some of that money is going to another study to see if we need changing tables on trains. Put them in, don't put them in. I don't really care. Just stop making money or spending money to do studies. $7 billion for the National Science Foundation. And Republicans are saying, well, this is a $3 billion cut from last year. Well, after what you hear this money is going to, it should be a no billion dollar budget. $500,000 to study how much oxygen a fish needs when it's on land. $3 million to study why the music from Jaws makes us nervous. Almost $600,000 to study chimpanzees' poo fighting abilities, with their only conclusive finding was that most chimps are right-handed, like people. $75,000 on why teenagers watch porn now versus during the COVID pandemic. I mean, delete all of that. How about the FDA and agriculture? $1 million to study the benefits of nitrogen on carrots. Look, any farmer knows, all colored fruits and vegetables, in fact, most plants require nitrogen to grow, with the exception of like clovers. There, study over. $500,000 for pecan genetic diversity. Okay. $1 million for efficiency in catfish agriculture. And this is the best. If you really don't want people to know what the money is going to, you just throw in really big words in a run-on sentence and give it $11 million. Check this out. This is actually from it. For administration of humane population growth suppression strategies, including immunocontraceptive vaccines and permanent sterilization efforts, prioritizing the implementation of existing immunocontraceptive vaccines when appropriate. What the hell does that even mean? Delete. This bill is over 6,000 pages of junk. Shut it down. John Hart, CEO of Open the Books. I can't think of a better guy to talk about this with. John, every time Republicans or Democrats, and we get crap in thousands of pages.
That's right, Carl. Look, and thanks for having me on again. Look, we did a study on all of the agencies in the federal government earlier this year. We found there were 441, okay? 75 are defunct, but they're still on the books. Do you know how many are allowed under the Constitution? About 4, maybe 5. And so we could have a 99% reduction in the number of federal agencies, and we would be wealthier, happier, more productive, a more secure nation as a result. And look at, just think about one department alone, the Department of Education. It did not exist until 1980, and somehow we managed to win 2 world wars, become a global superpower, and put a man on the moon without that department. We've spent about $4 trillion since then on that department, with 0 improvement in education as a result.
0 improvement? We're worse. We've dropped like 40 points in the global standard.
I'm being very charitable, yes.
I'm not. But here's the thing. Like, we have Republicans in control of all the branches right now, okay? Why are we doing studies on monkeys throwing poop?
Well, look, it's just, politicians can't say no to new spending. They can't say no to constituencies. And that's why this is such a critically important month, really. And that's why I sent a letter to Pete Hegseth recently saying, look, this is the time to end all the corrupt practices in DoD spending, like use it or lose it. Every year, the Pentagon throws money out the door twice the normal rate in September. And it isn't just the Pentagon; it's every agency, and it's not Hegseth's fault. We're trying to help him succeed. He's trying to reorientate the Pentagon back to the warfighting mission that you committed your life to, and so many Americans have as well. Yeah. And this is the time to be different today, this month, particularly these next 5 days. And the American people and our potential adversaries are watching what we do.
Well, John, I'm glad you brought up military spending because we spend more on defense than the next 25 countries combined. Like 23 of them are allies, I think. The other thing is this use it or lose it. Let me take a best step back. I remember sitting there, new guy in the platoon hut, and they're like, hey, Carl, think of some schools or places you might want to go by the end of we're talking like it's the end of August. And I'm like, I don't know. We ended up going like helicopter skiing in Lake Tahoe because we had to spend millions of dollars as winter warfare training. Otherwise, we weren't going to get it at SEAL Team 10 in the next budget.
Yeah, look, it's embarrassing. And look, the administration has had the guts and the backbone to pause a lot of unnecessary spending and frankly, very politically risky things as well. If they can stop international food aid, they can certainly stop delivery of things like lobster tail. We spent $16 million at the end of last year throwing money out the door on things like lobster tail, ribeye steak, new office furniture. And think about the absurdity of that. Are we going to deter a Chinese invasion of Taiwan by lining the shores of Taiwan with office furniture? No. It's ridiculous. And again, this is the time to be different. The American people voted for change. They voted for a different course. And this is really the moment to deliver on that.
But what about this noble concept that, private companies do where you have a zero budget every year? You go back to the well and you say, I intend to spend money on these things and maybe give myself a 5% buffer zone and I can come back to the well if I absolutely need it. But instead of saying, well, you had $130 million last year, so we're going to give you 130 plus 2% this year. And, if you don't spend that, then we'll give you, there's the incentive is to waste money.
Right. That's exactly right. And the talking point that you hear all the time is what's actually happening most of the time is a reduction in the rate of increase. That's what Democrats.
That's not a cut.
So a great example is Medicaid. Okay, we're gonna be expanding Medicaid massively over the next 10 years by $250-300 billion. And what they did in the one big beautiful bill is change that rate of increase from about $400 billion to maybe $250-300 billion, and that is supposedly going to decimate Medicaid, which is an absurd suggestion. So I think the president is right to play hardball. Republicans are right to play hardball. Mm-hmm. And the point is, don't be afraid and make the argument very, very aggressively that we're doing this not because we're myopically focused on cutting waste, but we're focused on lifting people up. Yeah. Every dollar saved in Washington is a dream realized somewhere else in the country. Because you're putting money back in people's pockets. It means you have to work fewer hours and spend more time with your family. You have more money to spend on raises and create jobs. That's how the real world actually operates.
Yeah, it is.
We're on the right side.
The Department of Education actually cutting that the greatest justification for that is watching Congress do math, where they say we're saving you money because we gave you not as much as we were going to give you. We've actually cut the increase, but it's just all Common Core. John Hart. Always a pleasure, my man. I'm sorry that the world is crazy.
Thanks, Carl.
All right,
thanks for everything you're doing to make it plain.
Yes, sir. And while we're negotiating how much money we intend to spend or waste, the new numbers coming in on the GDP revising it up to 3.8%, while inflation is over a point below that, further reinforcing the need for the Fed to lower interest rates like Trump has been saying. Director of the National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett. Sir, great news that they've revised it up, but why was it so low in the first place?
Well, I mean, this is a revision that I don't think is suspicious in any way politically. It's a 3.8% number. It's a fantastic number. But most importantly, the GDP deflator, which is one good measure of inflation, was only 2.1%, which is about the Fed's target. This is exactly what President Trump has been saying, that we're going to have a golden age with high growth. But because we're making factories come back to America and workers come back to work, it wasn't going to cause inflation. And that's very, very clearly the story of this report.
Sure. But, I mean, historically, sir, from an economic standpoint, when growth is 1.7% higher than GDP is, people are trying to expand their company, but without access to cheap capital, i.e. lower interest rates, they're literally stifling President Trump's ability to grow.
Oh, right. And that's why my former colleague, Steve Myron, has been out there calling on the Fed to lower rates. With inflation this low, then what you need to do is basically feed the capital to the economy that we need, given all the things that we're doing to onshore American jobs. And so I expect that that's what we're going to see, is that we're going to see a sequence of moves, a little smaller than Governor Myron would like, but I guess we're going to see a sequence of moves. And they're going to be data dependent because, look, we just saw this data. These data are just about as good as you could get, like almost 4% GDP growth with inflation half as big. I mean, that's fantastic.
And that is still with the tariffs in place, with all these ongoing, just call it unresolved trade issues with a bunch of countries. And it still hasn't raised inflation any meaningful amount. It has actually expanded GDP growth. Is there any narrative to say that what Trump is doing isn't working?
I can't think of it right now. The bottom line is that we knew all along that the tariffs weren't going to cause inflation, and that even if there was a temporary hike in prices, it would just be temporary because tariffs affect the level of prices, not the inflation rate. Mm-hmm. And so, look, maybe tariffs had some small effect on this number, but it's only 2.1%. So President Trump's theories have been proven correct in the data now, and that's why we're moving forward and accelerating his agenda.
Yeah. The other thing, as I was just talking about, was the fact that we're set to at least try to fund the government again. But printing money, to the extent that we do every single year, less so in this proposed budget. The White House has been very strict about making sure that we're spending less money here via Doge and everything like that. But if we could, what does it take to get the message to Congress? You're going to have to be a little bit more fiscally conservative, guys.
Right. Well, we've already done a lot to cut spending in the big, beautiful bill. And of course, we're not done. And one of the things that you've seen is that the Director of Office of Management and Budget, Russ Vought, has basically, in some sense, thrown down against the Democrats, saying, look, if you don't give us a continuing resolution, if you try to shut down the government, then we've not got the money to pay people, and so we're allowed to say goodbye. And that's something that no administration before has been courageous enough to say to an opponent, but Russ Vought is a tough guy, and the president's tough. And I think that I worry for the Democrats if they don't actually give us an open government. If they try to call Russ Vought's bluff, it's not going to work.
Yeah, well, that's, like I said earlier, the Democrats can choose to give Trump a win on the bill. That's a win for the American people. Or they can shut down the government and we'll fire a bunch of federal employees, which is also a win for the conservative side. Sir, Kevin Hassett, we appreciate it very much.
Thanks so much. Great to see you again.
All right. Coming up, Kamala revealed that Jasmine Crockett was part of her special project. Well, the vice president can't wait to get into that one. But first, why is this COVID-era housing assistance causing so many lawsuits? Interesting. Civil rights, maybe. Next. What's the black population of America? 13, 14%. So can you explain to me why more than half of the COVID housing assistance went to black people? It wasn't because less white people needed it. In fact, in Alabama, 85% of COVID housing funds went to black Americans. In Georgia, 82%. In Missouri, where the black population is only 12%, 44% went to black Americans. Why did it appear in some of these states, too, that they only sent out text message campaigns for the program to people in heavily minority communities? Well, because of a little clause written into the allocation that said it should only go to people first who are socially disadvantaged, which in this case meant white people need not apply. And a bunch of people are now suing for discrimination, and we could find only one other news article about this case with lawsuits in multiple states. Nobody in the media is even really talking about this. This is a major civil rights issue. Tudor Dixon, host of the Tudor Dixon podcast, and obviously, Tudor, you know a little bit about housing from your time in Michigan. I am sorry, this seems crazy to me.
Well, it's terrible. When you think about this, you create a new term, socially disadvantaged. This comes out from the White House. It goes to all of these folks that are controlling money that's going to go to people in an emergency situation so that they don't lose their homes. And yet the qualification has nothing to do with their salary, whether or not they're working. There's no qualifications that have anything to do with their finances whatsoever. It has to do with whether they are socially disadvantaged, a term no one's ever heard before that has to be defined by the Biden administration. And as you mentioned, the people who are at a financial disadvantage in this case, who were in the situation where, remember, you were either essential or you weren't. So now, not only now are you not socially disadvantaged enough to get financial help, you were also not essential. So a lot of the people who weren't working were not eligible for this in the minds of the Biden administration, and they got no notification that this was available. So think of all of the people who were not falling into the socially disadvantaged calculation, who now are struggling. They either lost their house or they're now finding out, my gosh, I could have had help from the government, which was help for, which should have been help set aside for people who financially needed it. And yet they overlooked me because of my race. They actually specifically didn't talk to me about it because of my race.
Well, that's the other thing. Some of these people got $50,000 checks, and even worse, Tudor, a lot of these problems happened in red states. Governor Stitt is in panic mode right now, who's a friend of the show, by the way, but a guy he appointed was in charge of administering this, and in his state, there's lawsuits for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Governor Stitt, and I like Governor Kemp as well, and I understand that this went through these agencies, and I think that this is the problem when you have a radical social project in the White House, and then you have this socialist bent, this far progressive bent in the White House. Obviously, we know Joe Biden wasn't there. We've seen the picture at the White House. It was just the auto pen. So we know it wasn't him. It was the social radicals that were putting out this message. And when they get, and you have to understand that when these get to these agencies, if you are a governor, if you are not constantly in touch with these agencies, you don't necessarily know what they are doling out. And you're in the middle of a pandemic. I have no doubt that Governor Stitt and Governor Kemp are both going to do their best to make this right. But at this point, this money has been doled out. Now we're just finding this out. And as you pointed out aptly, where is the media on this?
Right. Well, I mean, and look at some of these lawsuits. Here's one from Georgia under Kemp, where it states, must prioritize remaining funds to socially disadvantaged individuals. The act does not define socially disadvantaged individuals, which, to your point, Tudor, only leaves some bureaucrat sitting somewhere that gets a huge swath of federal money to say, I think this is socially disadvantaged. We're going to give it to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have to remember that you have career employees. For people who are not familiar with government, you have career employees. And that's why these positions of governor, of attorney general, of secretary of state, all of these people are so important that you have them on your side, because look, we're seeing even in red states, some of these career employees were corrupt or doing the wrong thing or manipulated by the progressive left. And that's why we have to make sure that elections matter, you get the right people, and those people are able to appoint the right people to the positions.
Yeah. Otherwise, you get government run amok. Tudor Dixon, pleasure as always.
Thank you.
All right. Well, coming up, Kamala Harris revealing the secret project she worked on as VP, shaping the, quote, rising stars. Yeah, right. This is so weird. I don't have any of those. We got that garbage and more in our Culture Clash. All right, we're back with another excerpt from Kamala Harris's new book. We're reporting on the good parts, I should say, so you don't actually have to buy it or read it. This time, she's revealing her secret project, saying, when I became VP, I had a secret project called the STARS Project that only my senior team knew about. Yeah, it was super sneaky. We'd brainstorm, no you wouldn't, about younger talents in the party, and then on Friday afternoons, I'd invite one or another to visit my office in the West Wing or residence. Gee. And who was on that STARS Project list? She called the very talented. Many of those on my list spoke at the convention. Laura Underwood, Robert Garcia, Angela Also Brooks, Latifah Simon, Maxwell Frost, Joe Nagis, and Lena Hidalgo, and Jasmine Crockett. What? Okay. Now, people are speculating that when Jasmine Crockett spoke at the DNC, the story she told about Harris was from her first STARS meeting.
When I visited the vice president's residence for the first time, she turned to me and asked, "What's wrong?" Mind you, we'd never met, but she saw right through me. She saw the distress. I immediately began crying, and the most powerful woman in the world wiped my tears and listened.
Whatever. Kate Smythe, writer for KSmytheHill.com, and Sean Farash, comedian and host of Ungoverned on LFA TV. Kay, this book is hilarious.
It's just getting so out of hand. I also love how this story kind of further plays into this rumor I keep hearing that the Democrats go to the worst acting schools in New York and Los Angeles, and that's where they source all of their up-and-comers from. You know, the people who can't read, so they become actors. They're never actually going to be successful in it because being a successful actor means, you know, playing the game. It's not actually got anything to do with acting. So it also makes sense, you know, why every time Jasmine Crockett goes on different TV channels, same as Kamala Harris, we hear like the different accents and the different stories and the crocodile tears. Yep. It just writes itself. Sean, it's so stupid.
But, you know, 90% of America, I think, even most Democrats, I know some that are like, dude, that woman, I don't want her in my party.
No. Well, first of all, I don't think they want either woman in their party, Jasmine Crockett or Kamala Harris. It's funny because you mentioned, you know, I said in the book there that they went to brainstorm. It's kind of hard to brainstorm without a brain, right? It's like a thunderstorm without thunder. It's just rain, nothing special, right? That's all it is. So, you know, I find it interesting. You know, first of all, I think we know she didn't actually, quote unquote, write it. Fine, whatever. Everyone uses ghostwriters. I don't even know why they bothered to have her read the audiobook. Who wants to listen to Kamala Harris for 9 hours? I don't. That's why everybody voted not to, right, in November. So we don't have to listen to her for that extended period of time.
Yeah. Kay, speaking of the brain children of the left, take a listen to what MSNBC investigative analysts had to say about this Dallas ICE shooting.
So, you know, we can tone down the rhetoric, and that's the right message. But you also have to start looking at what policies you've implemented, what tactics you're using, because if you tone down the rhetoric but you leave those other pieces in place, nothing's going to change.
So basically he's saying that because ICE is enforcing the law, if they don't stop enforcing the law, these are going to continue?
Yeah, because people don't like mean words. They really don't like mean words, especially when they're accompanied by like really significant positive action. Like, I don't really understand. I don't understand what happened that we all of a sudden, or not we, this like very small, very loud faction of not just this country, this happens back in the UK, this happens all over Europe. These really just stupid people don't understand that laws have to be implemented for us to all live safely. And I can't vote, guys, but I'm pretty sure that this is what all you guys voted for. Also, this was a tragedy. Like, this was an absolute tragedy, and he's going on there blaming the guys who got shot at. What?
Yeah, it really is shocking to me. I want to end on a lighter note here, Sean. Starbucks, they're having to close a lot of their stores. And I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say maybe stop writing bad things to conservatives on coffee cups. We'll stop going there.
Yeah, you know, I wish I could say I felt bad for Starbucks, but I don't. And that's, again, because we're in the consequence culture era where you write things like you see on your screen right there. On coffee cups, people are probably not going to go back because they don't want to be called names or, you know, get lectured or, you know, be talking down to, you know, when they get a cup of coffee. And not just for nothing, right? And this is my personal opinion. Their coffee's not even that good. So first of all, you got to stop insulting your customers. Second, make a better product. And maybe you won't have to close locations.
Sean, that's awful capitalist of you. You must be evil.
Terrible.
Terrible. Okay, Sean, pleasure as always.
Thanks,
Carl.
All right, coming up, the Justice Department preparing to ask a grand jury to indict former FBI Director James Comey as soon as today. Details next. Well, sometime between when we just got to before the last commercial break and now, ABC News is reporting that James Comey has been indicted. This is crazy. I mean, word. Editor-in-chief of the Washington Reporter, Matt Foldy, and elections correspondent at the Federalist, Brianna Lyman. All right, you guys aren't going to know much more about this than I am because literally, Foldy, you texted me this 10 seconds before air. So take that bolo tie and tell us what's up.
Live news, baby. You'll love to see it. But look, I don't think any of us feel particularly bad for James Comey, but I think further reason to not feel bad for James Comey is it's definitely difficult to have the full weight of the federal government crushing you down, whether or not you're guilty or innocent. This is something James Comey has done himself to the President of the United States. So I just think we're going to learn, obviously, the specific details of this indictment in, maybe in between the next segments. But I think that, there's more evidence with which to investigate James Comey than James Comey ever had to investigate Trump.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Brianna, I mean, this is something that, like, look, since tweeting out 8647, he has been on the radar. Now, did they move fast enough? I don't know. But, Trump appoints a new attorney, all of a sudden goes after him, and now we're looking at a grand jury indictment. This is huge.
Oh, it's absolutely huge, and this should not be the last step. Look, we need investigations into these Russiagate investigations themselves. We have to see what went on all those years. Another way, even if James Comey, if this indictment turns out to be nothing, we need to force people like James Comey, Brennan, Clapper, to really answer for their involvement in Russiagate, because that in and of itself is a punishment because they have to defend the indefensible. The Democratic Party has to defend the indefensible. So there are a lot of avenues to get some accountability, but we need to see it done before Donald Trump is out of the White House.
Yeah, no, 100%. Foldy, we had all these things planned for this thing, but I really wanted to spend a lot of time on this because...
Carl, once again, James Comey is ruining people's days.
Exactly. Ruining the entire segment. Actually, no, this is probably the best news I've heard in a long time. This is the guy. Let's walk all the way back with Hillary Clinton, okay? He was like, we're investigating her. No reasonable prosecutor could find a reason to charge somebody who smashed BlackBerries and used BleachBit software for having a classified server in her basement trading on the State Department. I mean, this guy screwed everything up. And then the things that he oversaw while he was FBI director, and the smugness to write the book that he did, basically being like, I'm right about everything, I know everything, and everybody else is dumb.
Carl, that's actually such a good point. The first time really most people heard about James Comey obviously was when he put out that letter a couple of days before the 2016 election that Hillary Clinton, I think, wrongly blames for her loss. I think that she should blame her horrible campaign, not going to Wisconsin, things like that for her loss. But it was not like he was trying to help Trump. It was that Hillary Clinton committed crimes so comedically obvious that it would have been absolutely impossible for the FBI director to say absolutely nothing. So her ineptitude, her flippancy with which she said, like, what, with a cloth or something, that's what pushed James Comey to have no option but to say, hey, guys, we are going to open an investigation into Hillary Clinton. But you're totally right that almost everything he did as FBI director was a disaster. After Trump won the election in 2016, obviously, James Comey then flies to New York City to brief Trump about something that was so obviously false that only BuzzFeed News was published it. That was, of course, the Russia hoax that was paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign. And the thing about this indictment is, depending on what's in it, honestly, maybe everyone will agree with this because Democrats hate him, again, for the wrong reasons of him perceiving to have helped Hillary Clinton. Maybe America can come together around a James Comey indictment.
Yeah, I think so. Brianna, lastly on this whole thing, though, this is what 75 million Americans voted for in the last one. They were tired of people just skirting the law, doing whatever they want. In this case, lying to Congress, which, by the way, they said the Democrats sent two people, Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, to jail for not saying anything to Congress. And this guy lied to Congress. Enough evidence exists to get him a grand jury indictment.
Yeah, and I think that to Matt's point, this should be bipartisanly welcome because guess what? This is merely an indictment or a grand jury indictment. These are allegations. If he's innocent, he's innocent. If he's guilty, he's guilty. But at the end of the day, if nobody is above the law, the way Democrats have told us for years when they conducted lawfare against Republicans, they will let the legal process play out without any conjectures about this being lawfare or partisan targeting to James Comey. So I'm excited to see how they're going to respond to this.
Yeah. Conviction prediction, Matt?
It's a good question. Honestly, I think that he will not be convicted, is my prediction. But I'm happy to be proven wrong.
Brianna?
I think it just depends about the jury. I'm going to go with not conviction right now.
Man.
All right. Carl, what do you think?
You know what? I hope he is. I don't really like the guy, and I think he screwed up a lot of things.
You know what? I'll change my vote. I'll say convicted just so we have a little bit of disagreement.
Well, I'll go with definitely maybe then. How does that sound? All right.
Matt, perfect. We got all the answers on
exactly.
this panel.
Matt, Brianna, we appreciate it. All right, coming up, the California bill that is punishing social media companies, or could if it's passed, for not suppressing free speech. Like, are we living in the UK now? I don't know. Let's check it out. Folks, again, quick breaker if you're just joining us. Let's go, Lindsay Halligan. According to the reports, FBI Director James Comey has been indicted on 2 counts. 2 counts. All right, I'm going to get back to that in a sec, but look, I am a free speech absolutist. So when I am warning you about California, I need you to hear me out. Have you heard of this California Senate bill that passed 771? Well, it sounds a lot like what we're seeing in the UK right now. California is proposing, if it's completely passed through the state legislature and signed by the governor, a bill to fine people and companies for speech that someone else doesn't like, hiding behind buzzwords like harmful rhetoric and disinformation, which leads me to the study that they're basing their entire bill off. Okay? According to reports, the, quote, Human Rights Campaign, that's the basis for this legislation. The legislature says that this bill is needed because of a rise in the documented hate crimes. Hold up. The basis for this, wanting to fine people as much as $500,000, is backed by a single quote that claims to be fighting disinformation, yet in the same sentence refers to Florida's bill as the Don't Say Gay bill. The irony, because the actual bill's name that they're talking about is called the Parental Rights and Education Bill, which, in fact, if you hit Control F, which is fine, in the entirety of that bill, not one mention of the word gay. Not one time. You see why it's concerning to me that these people are regulating free speech, because they get to decide what is hateful or disinformation and whatever. It's defined by a political party that hates me. Nick Sorter, independent reporter. Nick, this is nuts.
I mean, what else do you expect out of California? I mean, it's called California for a reason. This is right up Newsom's alley. But you know what? If people were getting fined for false information or for speech on social media, Gavin Newsom himself would be bankrupted. I mean, he just sent a veiled threat to Kristi Noem the other day, where DHS had to actually put a statement out condemning him for it. Right after the whole Charlie Kirk incident, he's threatening, or his goons, I guess, on social media are threatening people like Kristi Noem, putting her life in danger. So who is this actually going after here? It's going after people that politically disagree with Gavin Newsom. And everybody sees right through it.
Right. Nick, I mean, your Twitter account is about as up-to-date as you can to the second. And obviously, you just tweeted out the news right before coming on, the fact that James Comey has now been indicted on 2 counts. What else do we know about that, if anything, and what's your take on it?
Well, it's probably going to be related to the Russiagate hoax. And keep in mind, this guy wasn't just indicted by, the DOJ didn't just decide by themselves to indict him. No, a grand jury indicted him on these 2 charges of obstruction of justice and making false statements. And you know what? We might even find that there will be more charges to come at this point. I mean, how many times did this guy lie in front of Congress about everything from Russiagate to, you name it? I mean, James Comey is one of the biggest liars that's ever worked in government, and I'm hopeful that justice is going to be served in this case. But if I were him, I'd consider myself lucky, because I think there are a hell of a lot of other things that this guy could be indicted on.
But the other thing, to your point, to this day, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are finding burn bags at the FBI related to Crossfire Hurricane, Russiagate, all these things that were supposed to have been destroyed by the previous administration. Thankfully for the case and for us, they haven't been. But if you have things like that laying around the FBI, I mean, like, there's got to be a lot of information that was presented to this grand jury that we may not even know about, no?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, we have no idea. We haven't seen the charge sheet yet. I'm sure that'll be coming out imminently because Pam Bondi just actually confirmed the indictment. So I would imagine the DOJ within the next several minutes will be releasing the full indictment. So we'll actually be able to see in detail what they have on him, what they found, and what the grand jury thinks that there's, probable cause to go after him for. Yeah. And there's, as you said, they're still finding things at the FBI. I'm worried about stuff that may have already been destroyed that we'll never know about. Yeah. But keep in mind we're in, I believe it's the new district or U.S. attorney out there for that district in Virginia. She is a fighter. She is going Lindsay Halligan. She is going to fight this case hard. If I were James Comey, I would probably not be sleeping very well here for the next several months.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see how all this is just unfolded with just 5 days until the statute of limitations would have ended on this stuff. So, Nick, we really appreciate it. And, folks, if you want up-to-date stuff, you got to be on his Twitter account. So, appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
All right, well, before we go, it's Thursday. We got comments for Carl next. All right, it's Thursday. We got another week of comments for Carl. Let's go. Start off with a question which I like this guy asked, okay? He says, hey, Carl, I have a question, a legitimate question. Why are none of the other rights prohibited and limited in states except for our Second Amendment? How is it that the Constitution for blue states to prohibit them? Well, the answer is not. It's not. The reason it's become a law is because we let it. And not only has the Supreme Court only affirmed that the majority opinion under Heller versus D.C. saying that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right, but the Supreme Court has also determined that any time the government tries to make a right and require it a permit, we can actually technically ignore that and exercise the right anyway. But the reason our rights are restricted is because we allow them to be taken away, which is precisely the reason the Second Amendment is existing, because it's the one we need most to stay free. Look, I also got two gifts today, okay? This is a coin holder that was sent to me, and also someone else sent me a shotgun, a shotgun toe pad and a belt buckle, which is fantastic, actually. Honestly, it moved me. It belonged to her late son, and it really means a lot that you guys trust these things with me, and the coin holder was custom built by another viewer, so we really do appreciate those things. Lastly, but certainly not sweet, this dude said, nobody cares about you, Carly. Thanks, Rob. Said the 104 followers to the guy with 200,000. Rob doesn't care about me either.
No, I'm trying to talk because we got a little breaking news. I forgot my mic was open. I'm trying to talk to my producers. I'm screwing up the last minute of your show.
Take it away, buddy.
Carl, thanks so much. We're going to talk about James Comey, as you know.
He loves the Constitution. He fights for what's right. He hates the bad guys. He's a freedom warrior. He's your freedom warrior. Watch Carl Higbie every weekday on Newsmax.